Today, I'm making cake, jam, and a soda from a plant native to Australia that has taken over parts of South Africa. Most people are unaware that this introduced plant is often quite intrusive and also edible. The Australian brush cherry, or water pear, was introduced by humans to South Africa in the 1960s. It is grown mostly as an ornamental plant and is particularly popular in the suburbs of the Western Cape. As with many species transplants, it outcompetes native plants for resources and adversely impacts local ecosystems in many different ways. Many ecology and conservation organizations call for the eradication of these trees from non-Australian landscapes, which is in contradiction to the fact that the plant is very popular in commercial nurseries and can self-propagate and encroach into new territory very easily. While the tree has very little benefit in non-native ecosystems, the fruit is edible and I have personally made it my agenda to eat as much of it as possible. The fruit has a mild, refreshing, tangy flavor. It is subtle, a little bit like watermelon, and has a crisp texture, a bit like apples or pears. Before you can cook with the fruit, you need to wash and rinse it in some water and remove any stems and the inedible seeds as well. This is quite simple to do just by crushing the whole fruit between your fingers, and the seed should come out quite easily. To make a cake, prepare and set aside 1 cup of crushed and pitted brush cherries. Preheat the oven at 175 degrees Celsius and grease a 22 cm loaf tin with nonstick spray or line with baking paper. In a large bowl, whisk together 1 cup of brown sugar with half a cup of sunflower oil and 2 evenly mixed. Whisk in 2 eggs until well mixed and somewhat light and a little bit fluffy. Not all the sugar will dissolve, and that's okay. In a separate bowl, sift together 1 cup of self-raising flour, half a cup of maize meal, half a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Stir half the flour mixture into the egg mixture, followed by half of the amasi. Mix well and repeat this once more until all the dry mix and the milk are mixed throughout the batter. Lastly, fold in the crushed cherries and pour your batter into the prepared loaf tin. Bake this at 175 degrees Celsius for about 45 to 50 minutes. If you're making the jam, add the jam jar and the metal lid to the oven at the same time you start baking the cake to sterilize the jar. Once the cake has been baking for about 25 minutes or so, you can start on the jam. Combine 3 cups of your crushed cherries with 1.5 cups of brown sugar in a pot and close the lid. Pop it on the stove and heat at a medium-high heat, allowing the sugar to melt and boil the fruit. The volume will reduce as the fruit cooks, but be careful not to burn the sugars, and if it's boiling too hard, reduce the heat. Once the fruit changes color and starts to look a bit more like a deep purple and taking on like jelly-like consistency, remove a teaspoon of jam and cool it in the freezer for a few minutes. Taste the chilled jam, and if it's too sweet, add some salt and or lemon juice to bring it to the right kind of taste preference that you have. Slice up and serve your cake with a dollop of jam and perhaps a cup of tea. To make the soda, grab whatever leftover pitted fruit you have from the jam making or the cake making process and blend it in just enough water to get the blender going and to get the fruit pureed. To this blend, add enough water to dilute the flavor down to your personal preferences and taste. And then once you are happy with the flavor that you're tasting in your liquid, blend in 1 teaspoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of yeast for every half a liter of liquid that you have. Pour this into a jar, bottle, container, whatever sort. Close the lid tightly and allow this ferment for a few days at room temperature until the yeast stops bubbling. Chill your soda in the fridge and serve cold on a hot day. Pamsore.